Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of Album Rants and Raves, where I like to collect together new releases that have come out in the last few weeks and run through them with you and either rant or rave about them, sometimes a little bit of both on it. And having had a little bit more time to dive into it and listen to it and digest it, you might get a different take here than when I do my new music finds, which is sort of that initial review of it and so forth. All right, but I got a bunch of them here to go through with you, and we're going to dive into that in just a bit. But before we do, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with album, rants, and raves. So first one up here was a pretty big one that came out, at least in the glam metal world, Extreme, also sixth studio album. This one here really surprised me. I'm going to be raving about it for the most part, although I got a few complaints. The album itself, I wasn't expecting to be very good because when I heard the first three singles come off of it, it had a very modern sound to it. It also sounded all the same, at least those first three tracks. They're also the hardest rocking songs on the album. So there was a couple things that I found very quickly. One, there's a lot more variety on the album. So that was a thumbs up. But at the same time, the most rocking songs had already been released. So if you didn't like that other direction they were going, you might not like this. I happen to really like it, though. I found the album to have many more peaks and valleys and things in it. And so the album clicked with me. And even though it had that more modern flair to it, it grew on me very quickly. So while this album really doesn't sound like anything else in the Extreme catalog, and then none of their albums really have except maybe the first two, this one here, I've got to say, I am raving about. I'm really liking. I think it's going to be pretty high on my list come end of the year, that sort of thing, and the countdown. But all in all, got to rave about the brand new Extreme 6. Next one to talk about is the Defiance Drive. This is the third studio album from this band. There's the three guys there. It's basically the band Danger Danger post Ted Pulley, who was the original singer for the band, continuing on under another name, because the band Danger Danger is out there. They're just playing festivals. They haven't done any new recording in a long time, but the name of the band and who they are is that. So the Defiance is Paul Lane, Bruno Ravel, and their guitar player at the time, totally spacing on his name, but Rob Marcello, there we go. Gotta give that guy props. It's great what he does here. But the album itself, if you've heard the three albums that they've done, the first one was absolutely outstanding. I mean, it just blew everything out of the water. I couldn't believe how great it was. Second album was pretty good, but definitely got more into that sort of modern pop sound that metal bands have done. And then this one here is kind of a cross between the two, but I have to say that while I do like what I'm hearing, it's not blowing me away. It isn't something where I got it and it just stayed in the player for a week kind of thing, the way that first album did. So this one here, not really wanting to rave about it, although I can't say there's anything wrong with it either. So don't get me wrong, if you like the sound of Paul Lane and Danger Danger and stuff like that, it is a great album. It's just that I'm comparing it to that first one that just blew me out of the water, and this one's not quite that. So maybe it's right in the middle kind of a thing. All right, this next one I had high hopes for, then it wasn't so great, and then it came back at the end. So it's kind of all over the place, which is why some of these are fun, because when I give you my first impressions, when I buy it, sometimes that changes later on, like this one. Ray Alder from Fate's Warning, second solo album, simply called 2. This one here, when it first came out, didn't do anything for me, and I was very disappointed because his first solo album was so good, and that one had blown me away. So I wasn't quite sure what was going on with it, but it was also the same week that the Defiance and Extreme and stuff had come out, so if you try to listen to this album where it's very different stylized and all of that, you might understand why. If your mindset's not in it, it's not going to be, maybe able to shift between those things. So a week or so later on, realizing I hadn't really given this album its due, I listened to it again, and that's when it blew me away. And now I find myself going back and reaching for this time and time again since it's come out. In particular, the second track on here, My Oblivion, has just jumped out at me and is so good. So I'm really raving about this thing. I think it's very good. It's got the same players on it as the last one. You guys may already have been into it, but it did take me a little bit to get into it. But in the end of the day, very good stuff. All right, next one here, Alcatrazz, Take No Prisoners. This is a newer lineup of Alcatrazz. We've got Doogie White in here for vocals, taking over for Graham Bonnet, who was ousted. Unfortunately, we got Joe Stump on guitar, who has done a very good job taking over lead guitar duties from all the famous people that have been in here, like Steve Vai and Yngwie Malmsteen, of course. And we've got original members Jimmy Waldo, Gary Shea in here, and then we got Larry Patterson joining. So, cool lineup. I like all the guys and everything. I like the last album that Doogie White was part of. And of course, I like the reunion album that had Graham Bonnet. The Graham Bonnet one I thought was fantastic right from the get-go. The last one with Doogie White took me a little bit to warm up to, but then I did fall in love with it. Whereas this one here, I've tried for a number of weeks now. And I gotta say that the sound of this is for me, is sort of run-of-the-mill. It has not grabbed me. It did not pull me in the way those last two albums did. So unfortunately, I'm gonna rant on this one here. It just isn't moving me. I had such high hopes for it. Now, I've had albums where it took me a year and then all of a sudden it totally clicks. So I'm not putting the kibosh on it and saying I'll never go back to it. I'm just saying at this moment, this Alcatrazz isn't doing it for me, so it's not getting the raves that I really had wanted to give it. All right, next one up, brand new John Mellencamp, Orpheus Descending. And this was one where I totally expected to be ranting on it. I didn't have high hopes for it at all. I didn't even want to listen to the singles that had come off of it up front. I just was picking it up really to have it in the catalog. And then I got home and I popped it on. And again, maybe my mindset was just right, but the album blew me away. I felt like I was hearing classic John Mellencamp from the 90s. He had returned to that more melodic rock sound as opposed to some of the other areas he had ventured into, the more folk and more traditional sounds of things and blues and stuff like that he'd been doing on some of the last records. So this one here, I felt like it was a very familiar quality to it. Then I later found out that Lisa Germano, the violinist, had come back into the group, and she was there through the 80s and early 90s. So maybe it's having that sound as part of it that really, was giving me that familiar feeling. I don't know. So despite John Mellencamp's vocals being more rough, raw, and gravelly as they've been on the last couple albums, as he's aged, that's my only complaint on it. But for this album here, at least, it finally all fits together. Whereas the last album, I really just couldn't get into based on those vocals. So this one here, definitely raving for me, at least. All right, next one up. Lukather, as in Steve Lukather from Toto, the album Bridges. Only 8 tracks on here, but he's outright said that he's not going to make another Toto record, although I don't buy that. I think we will get one at some point. But what he has done is basically built this collective amongst the guys that are currently in Toto, because they do go out and tour and stuff. And they all work on each other's records. So this album here, in my opinion, is a Toto album all in but name. We've got Steve Lukather. We've got Joseph Williams, the vocalist, although he's just doing background, but he does co-write on this. We've got David Page on keyboards, who also co-writes. We got Simon Phillips in here, Lee Skylar. So you've got all of the guys from Toto on this album. I mean, just look at the list of people that guest on this. They're outright telling you who that is. Plus, it's just got great album artwork on this thing. He's looking pretty good too. but the album itself sounds like a Toto album. So right from the get-go, I put this on. The last one that Steve Lukather did, not so much in my opinion, although I've actually warmed up to it. There was a bunch of covers on the last album. I think there's only one cover song on this one here, but I really like this album here. Like I said, it sounds like a Toto album on it. So if you've been missing that and you like all those guys from Toto, this album here will do that for you. Now, one that I, again, had high hopes for that just didn't live up to it in the end of the day is the new Ghost, and it's an EP, not a full-length album, but Phantomime. And it is cover songs, so again, it's not original songs, so I'm not going to be too hard on it. But I thought that from the list of the cover songs and stuff, you know, they do songs by Genesis and Television and trying to think who some of the other ones are on here, but I think we've got Tina Turner on here. We Don't Need Another Hero. The track listing sounded really great, and just none of it moved me. So I don't know. I definitely am a fan of the original material more than anything, and maybe that's it. I just really needed more of that. But all in all, this one here just hasn't done anything for me. I've liked their other EPs that have the newer material with maybe one cover song or something. Plus also they did record 4 or 5 other cover songs, although they chose not to put out a whole album of covers. Just this EP here, and then who knows what's going to happen with the other ones. But can't really rave about that new Ghost EP. All right, and the last one we're going to talk about here is one that I am going to rave about. Stewart Copeland, Police Deranged. This is the latest of new releases that just came out June 23rd, 2023 that I'm including here. Police Deranged for orchestra. So this is rearranged police songs done for orchestra. I didn't know a lot of information about it initially, but getting it, I was glad to find out that one, it's a studio album, so it's not live with an orchestra. I thought it was going to be all instrumentals, and it actually has vocals on it. There are 3 female vocalists that sing on here that have outstanding voices. So it's not just a recreation of police songs. There is some rearrangements and things within it, and it's interesting enough that it makes it sound new, but at the same time, totally fits within the Police vibe and everything. So if you're a Police fan, you're going to enjoy it. We've got full band, so there is drums, bass, guitar, vocals, all of that with orchestra. But the orchestra is the most prominent element, and maybe second in it is drums from Stewart Copeland. They're not too upfront, but I can really hear all the little tinkering and things that's going on and the subtleties of the extra drum bits and things that he's doing. So that's really nice. That if you're going to call it Stewart Copeland and you're a drummer, that you're going to really hear the drums. And that is case in point with this. But yet, it totally works with the rest of the orchestra and everything that's on it. And I thought it was just kind of be run-of-the-mill, sound like a tribute album, but it is really so much more, so I'm going to have to rave about the new Stewart Copeland. And hopefully you enjoyed that. Those 8 albums that we just ran through, the various rants and raves on those. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on it. Maybe getting to hear some more deeper thoughts from me on these help make your decision of whether you want to pick one of these up or not. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.